Cross Politic begins in 3, 2, 1.
I have a heart that breaks for a dying city.
Stop cursing your future.
Is not true.
For all intents and purposes, I am a woman.
No government, no political system has ultimate supremacy. Jesus is King of Kings, and it's about time our nation returned in humble submission to his lordship.
You are not protecting women. You are authorizing the destruction of 500,000 little women every year.
But I didn't start it. But sir, with all due respect, that's the argument of a 5-year-old. I didn't start it.
Right, when the Spirit comes upon people, they go to war, they go to battle, and the enemies of God are driven back and they're slaughtered.
You are listening to Cross Politic with Gabe Wrench, the Water Boy, Pastor Toby Sumter, and the Chocolate Knox.
Hello, y'all. Welcome to Cross Politic. Welcome to the chimney in Idaho, where it's actually nice and cool in the studio because it is morning.
What kind of water is this?
Boss?
I've never heard of this. This bottle is very strange.
It's basically tap water in a very nice bottle.
What is in it?
Water.
Just water? There's
Yeah,
a very
just
long
water.
There's a very long ingredients list.
There is.
I
Is
can't
there
read
really?
it.
Don't believe it.
I don't
Don't
know.
believe
It's
How's
just
there
really
ingredients
long.
in there?
I don't know. Nutrition facts? Why do you put nutrition facts on a
water?
water bottle?
Because they have to sell it.
That's hilarious.
That's how you sell water.
Yep.
Yeah.
The stuff that comes out of your tap.
So is this segment brought to us by...
It's brought to us by Voss water in a bottle that is
We-
sort of concerning to me.
We must be balling at Cross Politic to get some Voss water.
I know, seriously.
That's expensive.
What do we do? What do we
I was at Bootzer's.
How many people are giving us money?
They sell Voss water. I guess.
we must be raking it in if we're
Wow.
getting Voss water
No,
now.
this is out of my own personal...
You're a baller.
This is out of the goodness of my heart. This is...
Wow.
So who's this that's
So we
sitting
got a
next to me?
special guest in the studio with us today, Stephen Yates.
Hey,
We'll probably call him Steve on the show.
Steve.
That's
Yes.
allowed.
Yeah, that's allowed.
Thanks
And-
for being with us today,
Yeah, thank
Steve.
you
My
for coming in.
pleasure. Happy to.
Yeah.
And now you just stepped down as the chair of the Republican Party in Idaho
Correct.
to run for a lieutenant governor here in Idaho. Correct?
It wasn't cause and effect, but that is the sequence of events.
Yeah.
I was the state party chairman from 2014 until a few weeks ago. Earlier this year, some people had approached me and asked me, well, if you're stepping down as chair, would you consider running for other office? And I thought, well, I've been volunteering and traveling around the state. I don't know that I really want to think about that. They said, there's an open seat for lieutenant governor, and really would hope you would give it some consideration. And when I began to consider that, it just seemed to be prudent to step aside from one and work out the other.
Is lieutenant governor like vice governor?
It is kind of,
like vice president?
I spent some years of my life working for Vice President Cheney, and I learned very clearly the difference between being number one and being number two.
There's a Grand Canyon between number one and number two.
Wow. So, and so when is the election for this?
The primary is in May of next year. Okay. And in Idaho, the primary is a lot of the competition. Won't take anything for granted. Should I be privileged enough to receive the nomination, we'll fight a campaign through the general next November. But May of next year is the big event.
For Republican.
Correct.
Republican.
So were you stepping out of politics? Were you like, okay, I've done my deed. I'm done. I've done my civic duty? Or
Well, I feel like politics is one of those things that, civic engagement and being involved in what's going on in the American system, I think it's one of our blessings. I spent some time living overseas. I spent a few years in a country that had come out of martial law, and when I came back from that, for me, it was I was hooked. I had to be involved in some way or another. And so I would have done that.
Was that when you were doing your Mormon mission?
Yeah, I was a missionary in Taiwan from 1987 to 89, and they had just come out of martial law and beginning their democratic process.
Wow. Okay.
I think I sat down with a gentleman who started a Christian classical. I didn't sit down with him. Davies Owens, my friend Davies Owens, sat down and interviewed a guy who started a Christian classical school in Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
Really interesting story. I know it's not Taiwan, but kind of
similar kind of situation.
And he's had great success with the Christian classical education institution.
Wow. And you're down in
Idaho Falls is where I live.
Falls, where you live, and you have family?
Yep, I have a son that's 12 and a daughter that's 18, and my wife teaches at a charter school in Idaho Falls.
Okay. All right.
And are we ever going to divide Idaho up like it really should be?
Well, sometimes I joke with friends that the boundaries of Idaho are what was set when everything else was done. And and so and traveling state, you do sense some real differences in regions.
Oh, yeah.
Where people come from. But, really there's been a lot of change within those regions. I'm sure you guys have noticed just up in this area, changeover of things over the last decade or so.
Yeah.
Similarly, things have changed a lot in Boise and, other parts of the state too.
So why Idaho? Why did you come here? Because you were on the East Coast for a while.
Yep, I was born and raised in Maryland.
Where at?
I was born in Olney, Maryland, in Montgomery County.
Yeah. I lived in Burtonsville.
I know it well.
Yeah.
My great-grandfather immigrated from England. He lied on a job application to get a job as an accountant on the railroad. Pulled it off.
Grandpa.
Yeah. I was a doctor?
The family.
What?
The family tradition continues.
And so you're in politics.
So now you're here.
It was a short trip, but we got there. But my granddad was one of 5 kids in that family. He was a country doctor, and he then proceeded to self-populate the St. Peter's Parish in Olney, Maryland, with 15 children.
Oh, wow.
So my dad is the 4th of 15 kids. I'm the oldest of 50 grandkids. And growing up in that area, I lived in where there's cornfields and dairy pastures all around us.
Yeah.
And we talked earlier before coming on air that it's just a completely changed area. The more I got involved in work, the more I realized I was doing things by phone and email. I had 2 brothers that had gone to college in Idaho. My parents had moved to Idaho Falls. My wife is from Salt Lake City, Utah. Her father was aging. Thought, we're finally at a point in life where I can live wherever I want. Where do we want to live? And my wife and I just prayed about it, thought about it, and said, this is where we want our family to grow up. This is a community with values that are closest to ours, and you can get anywhere from Idaho, it turns out.
Did you grow up Mormon?
I did.
Okay.
My parents changed from the Catholic Church to the Mormon Church when I was about 4 years old.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily advertise my faith journey as what everyone else should follow, but I lived in an area that was dominated by Mennonite Amish families, evangelical families. My extended family was all Catholic, and there were my parents that had converted to Mormonism.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I grew up as one of these things is not like the other.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so, but I went to everybody's gatherings and things like that. So I've always felt like I've had an appreciation for anybody's journey, feeling like that's the important thing, and I'm just not the kind of person that goes up to someone and says it's my way or the highway.
Right.
We should get more into that. We love talking about that kind of stuff.
We'll explore that in a little bit. Yeah.
But before we go there, let's get in a little bit of cross-politic news.
Like,
as you can see,
for example, one of the biggest things that happened this week is I got a cross-politic hat.
ooh, yes,
Right?
I did too, but I don't know it's a cross-politic hat.
Where's yours?
It's right here.
It's got the logo on it.
Why aren't you wearing it?
Well, Gabe, hold up the bag of coffee. What does it say on there?
So this, I'm going to hold it up. This is for Steven.
Okay.
So we got one of our favorite gifts to give our guest is our cross-politic coffee.
Mm-hmm.
It says Sovereignty Roast, and it says our slogan, I guess, is kind of fight.
Our tagline.
Our tagline is fight, laugh, and feast. So this
There
is
you go.
my actually, believe it or not, my favorite coffee.
Yeah,
it's amazing stuff.
Careful, it might make you a Christian.
I don't know.
Careful.
That sovereignty word is really strong.
That's right.
It's roasted locally, right here in Moscow.
Roasted in Moscow, and the gentleman's nice enough to let us slap our label on it.
Yeah.
Outstanding. But it does have branding.
It does have, yep.
That's right.
And it says cross-politic on it. Which look, I'm just saying.
You're objecting because this is just our logo.
I don't mind the logo. The logo's nice.
Hey, when you see the Nike swoosh, and that's all you see, what do you see?
We call it a swoosh.
You see Nike.
We call it a swoosh.
That was that Texas.
That was that
Texas.
Texas.
Yeah. I'm just saying Nike has a brand that's pretty big.
So does Jesus. So does Jesus' brand is bigger than Nike.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree with that, but can we put our brand somewhere on here?
What?
Cross politic? Can
It's
we
right
put
there.
Where?
It's
I'm
that
just saying.
flag. It's that flag
Bowing down.
Did you see that, Steve? So it's
Yes.
an American flag bowing down to the cross.
Because most people don't know what that is.
Yeah.
So I just want to,
Yes, but
let's
It's
put
a great
website.
gospel conversation starter at work, man.
I agree.
You're like,
And
what's
can
that
we-
thing on your hat?
Can we start that gospel conversation at our website, like crosspolitic.com or something like that?
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Actually, we should have some of our friends go buy some of our hats.
But where would
so
they
can-
go if they see the hat? They don't know where to go.
Oh, it's just like it's not on there.
Oh, you're saying it's not a billboard with our website domain on it?
Look,
Come on,
maybe
man.
we don't need to have this conversation
Come on.
publicly. I'm just saying.
Actually,
yeah. We're talking about our marketing inadequacies.
I'm just saying I would like to see
no.
crosspolitic.com.
No, it's actually really effective. It's the mystery.
the mystery of who is that?
Like,
what is that?
I want in on that. No, and you ought to say when somebody asks you ought to say not telling for the first time.
Oh, look, have you seen our little pamphlets?
Oh, it's got our branding on it.
Our pamphlets say Cross Politics Studio, Fight Laugh Peace. Oh, imagine.
Yeah, but
anyway,
we should,
what did Trump do? Did Trump do something in the news?
Can we take this part of the segment out of it?
Nope, not at all.
Forever.
Oh, man.
All right, what happened?
Okay,
Did anything happen?
We're probably going to bleed into the next segment on some of this stuff, but let's talk a little bit about Comey. I was actually excited to have Steve
Who?
on.
Comey?
Who? We
I'm
got
sorry,
a communist?
Comey.
Oh, him. I know who that is.
I was telling when we weren't on air, I was telling everybody that I have a deaf ear and I also have a Texas accent, so I get away with saying anything whatever the way I want. You know what
George
I'm saying?
Bush the Third.
Double disability.
So Comey. I was actually excited to have Steve on to talk about this. Comey.
He's an expert in
foreign
policy.
Foreign politics. And so Comey, the former FBI director that Trump fired, he was the head of the FBI during the the Obama administration, which is probably the Clinton administration at some level.
Yeah.
Same thing.
There was spillover.
There's a lot going on there. And then he was the FBI director coming into Trump's inauguration, and then Trump just fired him a month ago or something.
Yeah.
Weeks, yeah.
And he just testified.
So
he fired him 3 months too late, by the way.
I know he should have fired him day one.
That's
I know
okay.
because now he's
Nevertheless.
got this pickle going. So he testified yesterday or 2 days ago. Was it yesterday?
Why?
Was it
Yesterday.
Why now?
He
Already?
doesn't even have a job
It feels
anymore.
like the way the media talks about it. It feels like it's been 3 days already.
Yeah.
Well,
You know?
maybe by the time they listen to this recording, it will have been 3 days.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
That's right.
But he testified before a Senate
Intelligence Committee.
Intelligence. Yep.
Senator Risch from Idaho is on that committee.
Oh, really?
It's so nice to have an expert in the studio.
I know.
It's so nice. I don't even know how to act right now.
Some of those
How about
reviews.
Steven take the intro from here?
Take it, Steven. Let's go. I'm listening.
Some of those reviews on iTunes, they're like they don't really know what they're talking about.
So, Stephen, why was he testifying? He doesn't have a job anymore. What's the whole purpose for him even going before the committee?
Well, the reality is because we have a political theater in Washington that isn't really concerned about the law or substance. And so we have...
How do you really feel?
Honestly, because what he said... he was brought before the committee to ask questions about his concerns about the Russians trying to influence the U.S. election, questions about whether Trump campaign representatives or Trump himself had any kind of collusion
right.
with, and there's lots of people. I'm not a lawyer, but I play one on TV.
Oh, nice.
And
So do we.
The word collusion has some specific meanings,
Right.
and none of which apply to anything there's any evidentiary base for that I've heard of, and certainly nothing in the hearing yesterday brought that forward. But a lot of Democrats like giving a lot of speeches about what they're really worried about, what they're really concerned about. We need to get to the bottom of this.
Right.
And by bottom, they mean the beginning, because they don't even have the first few rocks to step across this stream.
Because they don't know.
Right, but that's why they're so worried, because what we don't know is so scary to us.
Right.
And so it was really a lot of theater about how bad the Russians are, and I don't have a problem with that. And that the Russians tried to influence our election. Well, sorry to break the news, but the Russians have been trying to influence American politics for a long time.
Sure, but also that was under the Obama administration.
Correct.
And they're influencing the election. So to me, that should be on Obama's shoulders.
And the biggest thing coming out of that was Jim Comey saying under oath before Congress that Loretta Lynch, the former Attorney General, pressured him to change the words he used to talk about Hillary Clinton being under active investigation during the campaign, to just call it a matter.
Don't
or
you mean
something
Trump?
Like that. That was President Obama.
No. I'm joking.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't you mean Trump?
That's right. But that's the conflation. So Comey under oath is saying, I had to make a public statement about the status of that investigation because if I didn't, a special prosecutor would have been appointed, and I knew from all the investigatory work we'd done that there's no case. But here he is testifying, saying that we have no evidence of collusion, but we have these concerns and people are following through. But I specifically leaked my private memo of meeting with President Trump because I wanted a special prosecutor to be announced. There's so many contradictions in what he was saying.
My head just spent off. So he broke the law to try and create a case.
Well, is that
kind of
would that
problematic.
be breaking the law for him to leak a memo?
We just said leak.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to go out.
Exactly.
Well, but
if I have a leak in my house, it's not supposed to be there.
But I'm just saying, if it's just a memo between him, or like a personal handwritten memo, there's nothing official on the record. Is that really?
Well,
I think it's totally fishy.
What do you do if at the time he's the director of the FBI? And he had met with the President of the United States. How is anything associated with that interaction anything than official government business?
That's a great
and
point.
Republican and Democrat senators asked, so in your opinion, you thought that your notes on that was your property and didn't belong to the United States government, and it was yours to give? And he was saying, yes, as a private citizen, I felt like I was compelled to
So he pulled that card.
He did, publicly.
Wow.
And I don't know how he gets out of that. But he's a 6'8" guy. And the one thing I've learned in politics is that there's heightism. And if someone is 6'8", people automatically think, oh, this guy must be authoritative and what have you. He's a very effective communicator.
That's why Chocolate Knox is not. He doesn't have it.
I got short people complex.
I boosted the seat up in here on purpose.
I see people with 6'8", and I'm like, you got weak knees, and I'm gonna tear them knees out.
Not happening.
Exactly.
Oh my
So
goodness.
that's my hot take on what was happening.
So the other
yesterday.
word I saw getting bantered around yesterday on Twitter was obstruction of justice.
Yeah.
What's the deal with that? I mean, is that a thing?
Well, the allegation is that President Trump had met with Comey privately and urged him to give up on or move away from the investigation into Flynn, his former national security advisor.
Right.
And it's
Flynn,
very, very unclear.
Flynn was the one who was under investigation for his dealings with Russia, or
failure to disclose meetings that he had, but he also failed to disclose lobbying relationships that he had. I mean, I don't think that there's really a lot of excuse for some of the things Flynn did, but the old Clinton line of "does it rise to the level" comes to mind.
No, I mean, how many? Yeah,
Right.
But you also you think in all this. So Flynn. That's a Texas thing. That's a Texas Flynn.
We're sorry.
He was under investigation. One of the reasons why Trump was so frustrated with Comey.
We're sorry.
With Comey. We need to go back and redo this whole last 2 minutes here.
No.
So I'm going to save you now, brother.
I'm going to bring this back in because there's a point for here.
Yeah, when we come back, go ahead and bring that back in and figure out how to say it during the break.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay.
We'll practice it.
More with Steve Yates when we come back on Cross Politics. Hey, some Bernie Sanders, right?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Next on Cross Politics.
This September, you are invited to New St. Andrews College Wordsmithy 2017 Workshop for Writers, where good writers go to get better. This year's lineup includes Douglas Wilson, Ndee Wilson, and Aaron Wrench, along with special guest Doug Tenaple. Doug Tenaple is the author and illustrator of such acclaimed graphic novels as Newts, Tommysaurus Rex, Ghostopolis, and Cardboard, as well as the creator of the popular character Earthworm Jim. You're going to want to register right away, September 20th and 21st and 22nd. This includes evening sessions with these writers, shared meals, as well as multiple workshops on learning to write well. This is in Moscow, Idaho at New St. Andrews College. Register at nsa.edu.
For 21 years and counting, New St. Andrews College has sought to obey Christ's Great Commission to disciple nations and build him a house, not just in Jerusalem, but throughout the world. Not with stones and mortar, but with living stones. We build and fight. This is the task of a Christian liberal arts college, to equip students with the tools to build and fight. And this is our joyful task as we seek to graduate leaders who shape culture through wise and victorious living. To learn more, check us out online at nsa.edu/explore.
Welcome back to Cross Politic. With us in the studio today is Steve Yates. He's a former Republican leader of the Republican Party in Idaho. He's now running for lieutenant governor.
Correct.
In the state.
Assistant to the governor.
Exactly.
Right. Number 2. And right before we left, Gabriel was going to say something, but he couldn't pronounce any of the words in his sentence.
No.
So he's going to try again.
At least not well.
Chuck Knox rudely interrupted me.
No, brother. You gotta see salvation when it comes, brother.
The Red Sea's parting for a reason.
Hey.
So I wanted to bring in our Comey discussion on. I think kind of this is an important point here. One of the reasons why Trump fired Comey was because he was frustrated. I have a hard time saying that rightly.
Just point to me when you want to say it.
I should.
Yeah.
That Comey would not kind of take the cloud off Trump.
Correct.
Right. So Flynn was under investigation. It was official, under investigation.
Still is.
Trump was not.
Right.
But everyone thought Trump was also under an investigation. And, and
where
Trump,
did they get that from?
Well, New York Times wrote that Trump was under investigation.
They're assuming that Trump
Slate
is colluding with
the Atlantic
Flynn.
Monthly. I mean, all these
Didn't
outlets.
CNN release an apology too for that?
Did he?
I think
CNN did misreport that Comey was going to testify that he never told Trump that he was not under investigation, and then Comey goes before them and 3 times affirms that
he was not under
the
investigation.
Trinitarian.
Oh wow!
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the magic number of 3.
So Trump was frustrated with Comey.
Frustrated.
Thank you. With Comey because he wouldn't remove the cloud over his head. And Comey is sitting here. Man, this is horrible for me.
Hey, Pastor Toby, you take Comey.
We got Comey.
Okay, you got Comey. You got frustrated.
The Comey part's on purpose.
Yeah, that is.
Say that for Bernie.
So finish the sentence.
But Comey was sitting there in cahoots with Loretta Lynch, like we already talked about a little bit. So he was already playing, ball with Hillary Clinton's Obama's administration. But then all of a sudden, he's not trying to remove the cloud from Trump and his administration and everything.
Isn't he
there's
supposed to be
something going
bipartisan?
on.
Isn't he supposed to be bipartisan?
Objective,
bipartisan, right? He's supposed to be.
He's the FBI director.
I think that's ultimately why he needed to be removed. And does anyone really doubt what his station in life would be if Hillary Clinton was elected? I mean, there's
2.
no. I think there's a number after 2 somewhere that he wouldn't have lasted this long under Hillary administration. Yeah, I think so. At this point, he became what an FBI director never should become: political, and the news.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to be the leader of a nonpartisan, focused on law and order investigatory agency. Yeah. And that, I think, was a big problem. But Loretta Lynch and the meeting with Bill Clinton started this cascade going the wrong direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. So I thought that was good. Let's switch over to Bernie Sanders. We'll probably spend the rest of this period and next period discussing this. So I'm going to play the whole 3-minute clip, okay? So lend your ears.
Their letter states, and I quote, "We write to express our deep concerns about the nomination of Russell Vought to the position of Deputy Director of the White House Office of Management and Budget.
Who's Russell Vought?
Mr. Vought has denigrated American Muslims.
I know who Bernie is. Who's Russell Vought?
You got it, Steve?
All I got was Deputy Director of the Office of Management and Budget.
Yeah.
Otherwise, which I'm sure is the most fascinating agency anyone could ever think of.
Well, they did come up with Trump's name on his budget. What was it? The greatest American budget ever or something?
That's outstanding. That's outstanding. Yeah, there's an office in the White House that comes up with the president's budget. And for those that are interested in the Constitution, you'll know that has the standing of basically a wish list to Congress. Congress is the one that has the authority to write the budget of the United States of America. Right. But the Office of the Management of Budget puts the president's ideas forward every year.
Another job we really don't need.
Yeah.
But this is
Imagine.
So this is a position that Trump nominating this guy for this position?
This will be the number 2.
So he'll be Deputy Director of Office of Management Budget.
Correct. So this guy is from Wheaton College too, correct?
Yes, we'll get there. We'll get there.
So Bernie Sanders is talking about this new guy.
Yes. Okay. So he's cross-examining him or interviewing him as part of the nomination process. Yes.
Okay. Hit it.
His writings demonstrate a clear hostility to religious pluralism and freedom that disqualify him for any appointment, including that of
his writings. So this guy's writings demonstrate a hostility to pluralism.
Okay.
Keep going.
Of Deputy Director of the OMB. So, for the record. In the piece that I referred to that you wrote for a publication called Resurgent,
I know those guys.
You wrote, Muslims do not simply have a deficient theology. They do not know God because they have rejected Jesus Christ, his son, and they stand condemned. End of quote. Do you believe that statement is Islamophobic?
Absolutely not, Senator. I'm a Christian, and I believe in a Christian set of principles based on my faith. As I stated in the questionnaire to this committee, was to defend my alma mater, Wheaton College, a Christian school that has a statement of faith that includes the centrality of Jesus Christ for salvation. And
again, I apologize. Forgive me. We just don't have a lot of time.
Bernie's, I'm not caring about the details here. Jesus is central. A lot of yada, yada, yada.
Gun to your head. Just put the gun to your head.
Yeah.
Do you believe that people in the Muslim religion stand condemned? Is that your view?
Again, Senator, I'm a Christian, and I wrote that piece.
Well, what does that say?
With the statement of faith of Wheaton.
I understand that. I don't know how many Muslims there are in America. I really don't know. Probably a couple of million. Are you suggesting that all of those people stand condemned? What about Jews? They stand condemned too?
What about Bernie? He's now asking, what about me?
Yes,
Bernie, what do you think?
Yes.
Senator, I'm a Christian.
I understand you are a Christian, but this country is made up of people who are not just. I understand that Christianity is the majority religion, but there are other people who have different religions in this country and around the world. In your judgment, do you think that people who are not Christians are going to be condemned?
Thank you for probing on that question. As a Christian, I believe that all individuals are made in the image of God and are worthy of dignity and respect regardless of their religious beliefs. I believe that as a Christian, that's how I should treat all individuals.
And do you think your statement that you put into that publication, they do not know God because they've rejected Jesus Christ the Son and they stand condemned, do you think that's respectful of other religions?
Senator,
let's open up the Quran. Let's see how they feel.
I'm being a Christian and attending a Christian school that has a statement of faith that speaks clearly with regard to the centrality of Jesus Christ in salvation.
I would simply say, Mr. Chairman, that this nominee is really not someone who is what this country is supposed to be about. I will vote no.
Boom. Religious litmus test. Boom. I think there's a couple things going on here.
You don't say.
Not just a couple. But first off, talk about the guy Russell who's being cross-examined here. I felt like his answers were good. I mean, at some points they were strong, centrality of Jesus Christ, but it's almost like he kept kind of retreating a little bit to like his school statement of faith. Like that was like
no, that's not what he was doing.
Okay,
and so I disagree with that. The backstory, the backstory on this, right? Mm-hmm. So what happened was there were back at Wheaton College. Remember when the professor there wore the hijab to identify with Muslims?
Oh yeah,
he wrote a response in defense.
That was a response to that.
He wrote
scenario.
a response to that scenario saying, we are Christians here at Wheaton College, and the way our position is that Muslims, like Bernie is quoting, he's quoting out of the context, and so so Vaught is trying. Did I say it right, Vaught? I'm turning to Gabe.
Russell Vaught?
Yeah. Oh, he said it the same way. That's scary.
Uh-oh.
Russell is trying to point out the fact that I'm right in response to her wearing the jihad and saying that, look, this is Wheaton's College's position on Christianity. Our position is we don't believe that Muslims are serving the same God because they do not have Jesus Christ.
Right.
And so he's trying to point Bernie Sanders to his article and the purpose for it to give the backstory.
Right.
Bernie never let him get there.
Right.
So I don't think he's trying to retreat, especially when you write an article like that.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
As a politician.
Yeah. Right. Right. And right in the middle of that event.
And right in the middle of that
helpful.
event.
That's super
so
helpful.
that's the backstory of what's going on there. So
that's helpful. That's helpful.
He's trying to.
But I still would want to answer Bernie's question straight up and say, yes, I believe they're
Bernie,
condemned,
I'm a Christian.
Right?
What else do you need to say?
Well, but Bernie's got a massive hypocrisy going on here because his fake value system says there's a separation between church and state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's using theological beliefs as a weapon in secular politics.
He's Christian phobic.
And the other thing is there are literally billions of people who believe that infants are born with original sin.
Yeah.
And we are condemned.
Yeah, right.
Until saved.
Yeah, right.
And so there are some simple answers he could have appealed to, but I'm sympathetic to a guy dealing with the full hisinator of Bernie screaming at you, not being able to think as quickly on his feet, but it's total hypocrisy.
I think that's kind of how you win, though. It's just by going straight up and saying, yes, Bernie. I would actually start preaching the gospel to Bernie right there. Let's turn the whole thing into, hey, Bernie, this is me and you you don't believe in Jesus. You don't believe that Jesus died for your sins. You're a sinner. You should just repent and believe. I'd turn all my answers right there just on Bernie.
We're all, I mean, this is kind of going with what Steve was saying, but we're all condemned. Right? In Adam, we're condemned. We're all have sinned, all have fallen short of the glory of God. And unless somebody dies for you, look, we're condemned.
Marcus Pittman, he said this, and I actually agree with him when he said it. He said, look, I'm not going to be mad at the person who's dying at the stake, their choice of hymn that they choose to sing.
Oh, sure.
Right.
No, this is.
I'm not going to be mad.
No. This is not criticism of him. I mean, he stood his ground.
He did. As far as I'm concerned, he did a great job.
This is
an issue with Bernie.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's the real problem.
So the bigger issue. Go ahead, Toby. I'll let you.
I'm just going to add. Maybe I'm slightly agreeing with Gabriel here.
It's a problem,
but
but his words are coming out correctly.
He's in.
But while agreeing completely with your point and what Marcus Pittman said, power to Russell.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Way to stand your ground. Way not to apologize for any of it. Amen. That's great.
Yeah. Okay.
And I would only say, just in terms of the broader strategizing about this, I do think that Christians need to do a better job of leaning in.
Yeah.
So standing your ground, of course, that's great.
Pastor Toby, do you think that Muslims are condemned?
Right.
And that statement is Islamic phobic.
I would say that all men are condemned.
David, you got to go. All right, when you do that.
I would say all men are condemned. The Christian faith teaches that all men are condemned because of sin. They've all fallen short of the glory of God. All are separated from God. All have.
How do you think that you can serve people that you think are condemned?
Because they're made in the image of God.
Yeah, well, you just condemn them.
Right. Because I love them. Like a good doctor goes in and says, you've got cancer. This is killing you.
But there's also a difference between people being condemned and you're condemning them. He was basically making a statement of fact of where people are on their journey.
Yeah.
Sure.
He's not the one judging them.
Well, you know what? The thing that I think is amazing is that have we done such a bad job promoting the Christian faith that people are surprised to hear that we think other people who are not Christians are condemned?
I know. Yeah, that's right. If you don't believe...
Are you surprised that I think that people who don't believe in Jesus Christ are not going to heaven? Are you really surprised about that?
It's been in the New Testament for I don't know how many centuries now.
You know the Bible,
and in the Old Testament, right?
Oh, sure.
You don't believe in Moses and the prophets.
Yeah. Right. If you know that the Bible, if the majority of Christians that this is a Christian nation, the majority of people here are Christians, then how come you don't know that,
right,
Bernie? No.
And he even said Christian is the predominating faith
in the
U.S.
If that's the case, then I'm not saying anything that the predominant Christian group of here in America doesn't believe.
Sure. Yeah.
So Yeah, no, you don't get to do that.
Right. I mean, everybody knows John 3:16.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
Who doesn't know that verse?
Yeah.
Right. I haven't watched football.
Yeah.
Exactly. Watch football. That's exactly right.
So let me take it this way now. So Bernie mentions pluralism, religious pluralism, like it is the truth. Right. The problem is, if you believe in pluralism, there is no truth at all. So for him to put forward, hey, we're a pluralistic nation, and that's what you should be signing up for, Russell. I.e., then it's like, well, anything goes from there.
Yeah. Right. How is it that you get to put somebody out? You hate discrimination. You're against it, right?
You're pluralistic.
Right. How is it then that you get to have a standard when it comes to me?
Right. Who cares about Islamophobia?
Yeah. You know?
I mean,
what religion is condemning me right now, Bernie, that you're using against me?
Yeah. Which is why I would argue that Christianity is actually the only possible foundation for a real pluralism.
That's it.
Actually.
Yeah.
So we would, if we grant that God made the world, that we stand as we were created by God, He made the world, and the world runs by His word and by His standards, and that all things are held together in Jesus Christ, and He is the way, the truth, and the life. It's on the basis of that, though, that we actually can respect other people. Mm-hmm. We can actually we can actually protect them because we believe in justice. And so, we're not going to. You can't murder someone because they look different than you. You can't steal from them because you didn't like what they did. Why? Because God said.
Yeah.
So God actually gives us His word gives us the ability to have a kind of I don't know, it's sort of a buzzword, but a principled pluralism of sorts.
It's a tamed pluralism.
But it's because there's a standard.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But if you try to make pluralism your standard, you have no standard.
Exactly.
Right? Because then you got the Quran and you've got the Bible and you've got,
the Book of Mormon.
Yeah. You got all these things, and wherever there's difference.
You just do that in there.
Why would that be?
Steve got
Why would that be?
But otherwise.
Oh, hey, Steve.
Yeah. Who was that?
Otherwise, you don't have standards.
Right.
You don't have a standard by which to actually adjudicate where those differences are.
I think there's really important, too, that Bernie Sanders was violating the First Amendment.
What's that?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I haven't heard of it.
And so, I mean, really, so basically, he is trying to say that someone cannot serve in a position of responsibility in the United States government based on what they believe.
Right. Well, let me flip that. What if he was a Muslim who believed in jihad?
Right.
And then I say no based off your Quran. I say, I will not vote for you because you actually believe everything about the Quran.
And he can say that. Uh-huh. But I think that when you're looking at these jobs and things like that, it needs to be on what would you do in the job? How would you treat other people in the job? How would you, in this position, execute the duties of the job?
So then, but doesn't someone's holy book ultimately instruct them, if they have conviction, right? Doesn't what they believe influence how they serve?
You can't disconnect.
Oh, it definitely will influence. It definitely will influence.
I mean, you can look at the Quran says that 2 women are equal to 1 man.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's built into the Quran that men and women do not share an equal dignity as image bearers of God.
And that would have been an interesting turn to ask Bernie. So Bernie, have you read the Quran?
Yeah.
And so are you now voting against every faithful follower of the Quran
that
for
you
any
disagree
public
with
position?
And all that stuff?
Right.
But this goes back to Toby's point about Christianity gives us the basis to have some sort of pluralism that it's tamed, it's restricted, it's inside the Christian worldview. Mm-hmm. But if you just have a blanket pluralism, then
Jesus is the one who actually tells us to love our enemies. He's the one that actually tells us to do good to those that do us evil. He's the one that tells us to return blessing for cursing.
What does the Quran say about infidels?
So can you have a Muslim governor?
Well, Martin Luther,
I wouldn't vote for him.
Martin Luther famously said, this is not an answer to your question. This is a...
Well, in that case, Gabe, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Martin Luther famously said that he would rather have a virtuous pagan ruling him than a tyrannical Christian or something like that. So I think there's something to that. So I think it depends.
We got to pick that up the next.
I think would honestly be the answer. It really does depend.
On what?
Reality, truth. Who are they? What are they doing? What situation are we in? Are we talking about a benevolent Muslim versus Adolf Hitler?
Well, it just so happens that we have a Mormon in studio, so we get to really ask.
There you go.
There you go. His ruling.
Yeah, what if we get a Mormon for lieutenant governor?
Who knows? Next.
Watch out. Watch out. There you go.
This is Cy Timbrunke with Answer Anyone Apologetics. In previous segments, we've gone over some of the difficulties with evidential arguments for the existence of God. Here's the question. Where do you hear evidences presented out in the world? In court. Who do you give evidence to in court? The judge or the judge and jury? If someone tells you that they don't believe in God and you try to convince them with evidence, who are you saying is the judge? Them. And who's on trial? God. We put the Lord of glory in the criminal's box and try to acquit him in the unbeliever's blasphemous courtroom. Now God has given us wonderful evidences for his existence. We can win that court case. We can acquit God. But who are we saying is the judge? The unbeliever. It makes no sense for the unbeliever to say that God must meet their burden of proof before they'll bow down and worship him. No. God has given everyone sufficient evidence of his existence so as to leave them without excuse, as it says in Romans chapter 1. When people become Christians, they don't go from unbelief to belief, but from suppressing the truth to professing it. Our apologetic presentation must be gospel-centered in the hope that God uses it to open blind eyes. For more apologetic answers, visit AnswerAnyone.com.
Welcome back to Cross Politic. With us in the studio today is Steve Yates. Really grateful to have him. And this segment, actually all three segments, are brought to us by Voss Water today.
And our dad caps.
Although I I was just looking at this bottle. It's just the weirdest bottle, you guys. I feel like I'm drinking out of a bottle of perfume.
Or shampoo.
Or something like that. It's just weird. Like I go to drink water and the it's just kind of small and I don't know. I feel. Yeah. But thanks for the thought.
I was just gonna say
he spent an extra $3 just to get that bottle.
I know. I'm not criticizing.
Are you complaining?
It was like I was at a football game and that was the only water bottle I could buy.
Really?
Yep. I was inside Boosters. I couldn't go nowhere else.
Tell him to give you a cup and fill it with some ice.
I should have done that.
You were at a football game
for 25 cents. You go into the football stadium and you got to buy what's there,
or the airport.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought it was like if they sold these at a football game.
I guess that wasn't a very well played analogy.
That's really weird. Yeah. Like, this is nothing manly about
throw
this.
It on the
field. I feel very sort of effeminate drinking out of this bottle. I'm sorry.
No, that can happen.
But I love you, Gabriel.
All right, man.
Dang.
You're welcome, man.
You bought him an effeminate piece of water.
So we're going to talk about we're going to talk about Idaho politics.
Idaho,
yes. And we're going to talk about Steve's running for lieutenant governor.
Yep.
And there's going to be a primary next May.
Correct.
And so I'm going to bring this back in right where we left off and ask the question about how will your convictions, your religious convictions. You told us earlier about your journey in the Mormon faith, and your folks converted when you were 6, I think you said?
A little earlier, but close enough.
Out of the Catholic Church into the Mormon faith.
So how do you think that affects your serving in politics?
Well, I think that all of us, if you've gone through any kind of real experience in your own journey where you have to confront, do you really believe in certain things or not? Everyone can have different views about whether it's okay to question your faith at different times in life. I would confess that at times in my life, I wonder, hey, do I have this figured out? Is this right? Is this wrong? You've experienced profound things in your life, profound loss, profound disappointment, what have you. What do you rely upon? At least in my faith and a lot of others in Idaho who have similar core beliefs, you kind of, when you run into problems in life, you rely on faith, family, community, and then government comes after all of that. And it gives you a sense of order.
A lot farther down the road.
Right. So when I think of, well, does that make you naturally part of the conservative movement? It did for me. And so very early in my life, I was working, after I came back as a missionary, I was speaking Chinese in church, and some guy said, I've never heard a white guy speak Chinese the way you do. How would you like to get paid while you go to school? I thought, well, I'm 22 years old. That sounds like a pretty darn good idea. Yeah. And so I worked for the Defense Department, and I used language, and I started working. But when the break time would come, there was this new radio host named Rush Limbaugh.
Who?
That was, yeah, exactly. He had a microphone that was
We've heard
famous.
across politics, but not
exactly,
Rush.
Exactly. So I went from there to the Heritage Foundation, things like that. But faith was kind of one of those first places where you learn about the importance of first things, why you do what you do. And everything I did as a party chairman and what I've done in politics is always tell people, find your why. And we're all given different kinds of gifts. Some people are blessed with being able to speak, teach,
like me,
fix, pronounce, so for me, in reality, it comes down to I'd have to say a little bit of anger about the way our government has interfered in the family and interfered in people's freedom to believe. And interfered in business. I am a small business owner. Every year I have my date with destiny with the 3-lettered agency that makes me really question things. But, I also feel like I've always felt uncomfortable with some sense of sectarianism in politics. People bring their perspectives into politics. People say, well, you come from this part of the state, you must be part of that group.
Right.
And I was just raised in a different kind of environment where even within one large family, we all loved each other. We disagreed on things. We could argue about things. I had uncles that fought in the Vietnam War and uncles that were arrested protesting the Vietnam War.
Right.
But we still love each other.
Thanksgiving was interesting.
Every holiday was. Every holiday. There's a little bit of Italian, which spiced things up, and the Irish made everybody feisty. It's just faith and family have been an organic part of everything I've done in my professional life.
Are there any unique things, particularly about the Mormon faith, you think that either contribute to who you are, or you think contribute to politics or contribute to American society? Are there any unique things about the Mormon faith?
Well, I think to Mormons there are some unique things in that if the elements of the Mormon theology, the Book of Mormon is something that's based in the North American continent. Right. There's a sense of connection to the idea of America, the founding of America, it being an inspired process. I know many other Christians believe that our founding documents and our founding fathers were inspired or guided. So I don't know that that's unique, but there is a sense of support for and inspiration behind the Constitution that I think a lot of Mormons have.
This is an honest question. I don't know the answer to, but that idea of inspiration for the founding of America, is that akin to like the chosen people of Israel? Is that in Mormon theology? Does America have a similar position to Israel?
There is a sense of there having been a prophecy of things coming forward out of this continent
or this continent.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders wasn't a part of that, but
he's welcome to read. If he'd like, I don't know whether he'll appoint anyone who's read the Book of Mormon to serve in any government capacity. Right. So, but I've never lived my life thinking, what would a Mormon do in this particular the position? No, we went through that as a nation when Mitt Romney was a nominee,
right?
So there, and I kind of felt odd about that whole thing, partly because I worked on other campaigns. I worked for Newt Gingrich, and in the earlier campaign, I worked for Rudy Giuliani. So here I was, someone who was raised Mormon, and here's this prominent Mormon candidate coming up, and I'm working for the opposition.
Right.
Campaigns.
Right. But as a politician, does your Mormon faith actually influence your thinking as far as politics?
Well, I have to say, really, it has to. Right. But I never think of it as my Mormon faith. I just think of it as, I wake up in the morning and every day the things that happen with my children and my family humble me to the point where I know that I'm begging for mercy no matter what. And so to me, I've had enough wild stuff go on in my life where I am LDS. I do believe in the faith. But I don't live every day saying this is my unique application of these principles. For me, the gospel, whether it comes from my faith tradition or any other faith tradition, in many, many ways, has some common elements. And if we don't get those fundamentals right, the special elements that make us distinct don't matter as much.
What would you say? So that's actually a really helpful way of framing it. So as an LDS person, how would you articulate the gospel in terms of then how it what's the good news of the gospel for you in terms of what inspires you to do what you do each day?
Well, that in the end, we're all subject to the laws of justice and mercy, and I, for one, will be appealing for mercy, and I think all of us will be, that there is no salvation but for the atonement of Jesus Christ. And that we're all children of God, that we're all brothers and sisters in Christ, and that we should treat each other at some fundamental level accordingly. That we are created by what I would consider love, and love is the organizing principle behind the creation of the world, and what we are meant to learn about and grow closer to and exemplify and be a part of. And I think that, all the things about what happened after we die, and every religion seems to define some elements of that. I might be a poor representative of faith in a certain sense, but I kind of feel like we'll figure that out when we get there. We've got a lot to work on to get it right in this life. And in terms of love of family, humble before your Savior, needing to rely upon your Savior, that you cannot be saved by your works alone, and recognizing that everyone else is on some kind of a journey, and your job is to bring them closer to that light, bring them closer to that salvation.
You said we'll figure it out when we get there, when you were talking about, the afterlife. What if I don't get it right this life? Is there any, am I in trouble, or is there some sort of
It's the Bernie
judgment?
Sanders question.
I assume that the answer to that is yes, but I'm not the judge. There is
but you
one
have
judge.
A standard, though.
Yes.
Right? What does the standard teach that you believe?
I'm taught that we are meant to accept Christ and be baptized. That we need to be baptized and then receive other ordinances of the church, that we're meant to be married and
but I don't
have
accept
families.
Let's say I don't accept any of that, right?
Yeah.
And I die. What happens to me at that point?
Yeah. Well, you would go and be judged, and you would go to a different degree of glory, perhaps.
Glory, not hell.
Well, you could go to hell if if you do not accept Christ.
Yeah.
There is not salvation.
There is not salvation. So you do believe there is.
But Mormons do believe that there are those who have died before receiving an opportunity to accept the Savior, that they could have saving ordinances performed for them in the afterlife. They would have an opportunity to accept.
The Bible verse that says that it's appointed for men once to die and then to face judgment. Mm-hmm. So how do they get around that?
Well, there's a verse in the New Testament that refers to baptism for the dead, and that is one element of where this idea comes into Mormonism.
1 Corinthians 15 is the passage you're referring to. Yeah. Do you want to jump into that, or do you want to move on to something else?
No. Actually, for this is so for me when I grew up in Texas. Did I mention that?
No, not at all.
I don't even know where that is.
So
what is that?
It's the Promised Land. So when I moved to Idaho in 2002, so Texas is like this Baptist, everyone's a Christian in Texas, and then I moved to Idaho, where it's like you got liberals in Moscow and you got atheists, and then you got like a good strong group of Christians, and you got a good strong group of Mormons, and so I started kind of seeing this. I don't even know how to explain it, but it was like this interesting dynamic between the Mormons and Christians in the Northwest that I hadn't seen before. And part of it is like I did have Mormon. I did connect with Mormons in Texas and when I was in Oregon and California in the 90s, and it used to be a greater distinction between the Mormon faith and the Christian faith. They used to be like actually even the founding of Joseph Smith. I mean, when Joseph Smith founded. Got the prophecies. One of the things he said was that the Christian faith is heretical, and it's a theology that comes from Satan.
Mm-hmm.
And so the founding of Mormonism believed there's a huge distinction between Christians and Mormons. And now over the years,
that's been gone. Almost.
That's almost gone.
It's
It's kind of, and I think
a lot of Mormons will identify themselves as Christians.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to a lot of LDS people that say, I'm a Christian. And then you find out, where do you go to church? Oh, I go to the LDS church.
Right. And Joseph Smith, that never would have happened.
Yeah.
But I think part of, and this is my analysis of how things have gone, part of what's happened is the Mormon religion has kind of become a chameleon religion over the years.
Mm.
You know, in the 1970s, blacks weren't allowed to be bishops and weren't even allowed into the greater
God
glory.
changed his mind, though, so you got that one wrong.
And then of course, you've probably heard even some of these arguments, but polygamy wasn't. No,
he's a missionary. He's heard all
this
these.
guy? Who is that? You know, and then ultimately, what I see is the really definitional issue between the Christian faith and Mormons is their view of who Jesus is, because this all really comes down to who is Jesus.
There's two fundamental theological points of departure. One is in the LDS Church, they believe that there was an apostasy after the first church was established.
Right.
After that, there was a reformation, but there was necessary to be a restoration.
Right.
A restoration of the authority of the priesthood.
Right.
And so that is what Mormons believe was restored through the revelations through Joseph Smith.
Yes.
So this idea of an establishment of an original church, an apostasy, and then a restoration. The other is the divide that was resolved for many by the Nicene Creed. And so is it a 3-in-1 deity, or is it three entities, a Father, a Son, and a Holy Ghost?
Right.
And those are the fundamental doctrinal differences but then when you come down to a question of what is a Christian, that's something that we've wrestled with since Christ. Mm-hmm. And the Nicene debate was that was fundamental too. And so when you have the official name of the Mormon Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it's the Church of Jesus Christ. You say, well, what is a Christian? Someone who's a follower of Christ. To a lot of people, not everyone.
That's Christian.
Then, so if you're a follower of Christ and you believe salvation comes through Him, does that make you a Christian? For some people, the answer is yes, and for some, that's not sufficient. There's more.
Depends on who you mean. What do you mean by Christ?
What do you mean by Christ?
Or who is Christ?
Who is Christ?
Is He distinctly separate from God, or is He one with God the Father? That to me is like what I've used this analogy.
It's kind of important.
It's super important because I've used this analogy before, where me and Steve are in a parking lot and there's two trucks, or at least it looks like one truck, 200 feet away. And as we both talk about it, you see a blue, I see orange, and as we start walking closer to the truck, we start realizing there's two trucks. One's a Ford, one's a Chevy, and we get closer and we realize, we're talking about totally two different Jesuses by the time we get 10 feet away from the truck.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what's happened to the Mormon and Christian dialogue over the last.
Yeah. It seems like when I've talked to, I go on university campus pretty regularly as a pastor and share the gospel. And remember talking, as I've talked to Mormons, a number of Mormons over the years, I think that distinction, that difference between Trinity and I don't know what you would say, but three entities,
right?
The Arian view, the view of Arius that was solved at Nicaea, is there's a question fundamentally. You look at how you talk and love your wife, and how you raise your children, and on the surface there's so many commonalities, and so it might be tempting to say, well, what difference does it make between Jesus being the eternal Son of God, or being this glorious deity of sorts that God made at some point, who had a beginning? What difference does it make? And I think bottom line, the difference is, I think, going to fundamentally be why we do what we do. Mm-hmm. So maybe the surface level looks a lot the same, but why we do what we do is going to have an issue. And so the question is one of does Jesus save us in order fundamentally to try to help us get back to God? Mm-hmm. And so he's someone who has this really, really close relationship to God, and so he can get us right up there, close to God. Mm-hmm. And so we strive to follow him and get close to God. Or does God himself come for us? Mm-hmm. And so if Jesus is the eternal Son who is one with the Father, then it's the Father actually coming for us in the person of his Son. And granted, there's all kinds of mystery there, but the disciples ask, show us the Father. And Jesus says, if you have seen me, you've seen the Father. In which case, our response, it's one of, why do we do what we do? Do I love my wife this way, and do I love my children this way, and do I fight for justice this way because I'm striving to get back to the Father, or do I live this way in response to the fact that the Father has actually come for me?
Amen.
I know we're out of time. We got to keep. I want to keep
Man,
talking. But
man.
Oh man,
Toby, no Oregon for Toby on that one.
Hey,
I didn't want to interrupt.
Come on,
Steve. It's been so great having you on
Thank
the
you
show.
so much.
Thank you.
And I'm excited actually to follow your campaign and find out more about that election.
We'll be back around.
Yeah.
Until next week, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politics.